And on social media, your name comes up.
So basically, I started acting. I was in elementary school, 12 years old.
I was grateful every day that I was on set. Every day on set is a good day, man.
There's a certain energy that you kind of just want to be around them.
We can talk about him in a second as well.
I'm not a sports guy. I don't even know how football is played.
Despite the fact that I left the show for my own reasons, and we can talk about that if you like.
So tell me, what's next for you? Well, folks, this is a super exciting day because my best friend Johann Urb is joining us on The Grass is Greener, and I'm excited for you guys to get to know him a little bit and to hear some of our conversation about pyramid breath, but also just about his journey from the Eastern Bloc and Soviet communist country into Finland and his journey to the States. But there's so many takeaways from this conversation that you can apply directly, whether you're feeling depressed or anxious or trapped or lost or need some direction. There's so many. I'm so grateful for this man. He's been a big catalyst in my life, and we get into all that. He's a very successful actor, very successful model, and in this last, I think it would be since he was 14, he started this meditation work, and he created his own breath work practice called pyramid breath that is profoundly transformational. I love it. It's made a big difference for me, and I get really to express and move sometimes it's the energy that's trapped in your body. And there's tools inside of his practice that helps you move that so you don't have to get sick from trapped energy. So this episode is sponsored by Pyramid Breath, and in 2 weeks is a teacher training. So in the show notes, you can go to pyramidbreath.com and read Johann's story. Check out some of the work they have there and check out the teacher training. After you hear some of what we talk about, it will probably bring up some questions. If so, please reach out to Johann on his social media, and there's a way to reach him. It'll be in the show notes below as well. So please sit on the edge of your chair, lean forward. We are going to do some of the breath work. There's a chunk in the middle where we actually do pyramid breath, at least a part of it. So don't do it while you're driving. And you think, there might be somebody that's going through anxiety, depression, or just can't, sickness. Share this with them because there are some profound tools in here that will help them directly and quickly. So please subscribe, share, like, all that stuff. Give me a review if you would be so generous. It helps with the algorithm inside of Apple iTunes. If you're listening to this on audio, if you're watching this on video, you probably found this on my YouTube channel. Please leave a comment and let me know how that's going for you. And underneath, especially when you do the breath work, if you have any questions, leave those there too. So thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, for stopping by. The Grass is Greener. I'm your host, Paul Greene, and enjoy this conversation with Johann Urb. Johann Urb. Okay, well, everybody, welcome to a special episode of The Grass is Greener. I'm your host, Paul Greene, and this is my good friend, Johann Urb. And Johann is here in California with me. Johann is a coach. He's a creative pyramid breath. He's also an actor. We actually met, funny story, in Europe when we were kids. We'll get into that, hopefully. Johann has been my biggest mirror in my life and one of them. Certainly the most influential and important people in my life as a catalyst to bringing in. Actually, I once wrote Johann on my birthday all the things that he had brought into my life. And while you're talking, I'm actually going to dig into my notes and see if I can find it. There was like 36 things deep that Johann had brought in, and it was for I think it was my 36th birthday. I was like, these are the 36 things you brought me. But Johann
is 2 years ago, huh?
It was 2 years ago. That's right. Yeah. Johann is one of the, he's one of my most honest friends. And we're going to get into some of how that was good medicine for me when we first met. And also one of my biggest challenges was Johann's directness and his honesty. But Johann Urb is seriously my deepest, most beloved brother. Of all of my family and friends, Johann has certainly brought me in alignment with truth and alignment to myself, and also introduced me to a lot of really, really powerful modalities. And one of them is pyramid breath, which Johann has actually created, which we're going to get into. But thank you, Johann, for agreeing to be here. It was last minute. This is a special week because your teacher training is starting shortly, and I wanted to make sure that we give people an opportunity to learn and hear about what you're doing with pyramid breath, as well as there's a lot of cool things that you're up to, and that you just came through a wild, like 90-day sugar fast, and you've continued. I want to dip a little bit into that. But stick with us, folks, because every time I have a conversation with Johann, I learn something, and I am a changed person on the other side of it. So that is our intention here from this conversation, is that you will get something juicy that you can apply right away to your life. We're actually going to do a bit of a pyramid practice while we're here together. So stick with us for this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Johann Urb, the one and only Johann Urb.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, brother, so much for that. And I'm just reminded how deep and long our friendship is, and how many likewise, I just want to really acknowledge you, brother. You have been there for me as I have been there with you through some of the most difficult, challenging, heart-wrenching moments of, dying of a proverbial death of identity and change in my life. And the way that you have held me and helped me become the man that I am today is truly profound. So equally, just so grateful for you, brother, and your depth and your love and your acceptance and your perspective, and how much that has changed me and made me who I am today. So thank you for having me on. And I'm so excited to have this conversation and to continue to be in discovery together of the magic and majesty of this life.
And that's what it is, right? It's like when you made the shift to be in the learning rather than the knowing, was like, actually, let's jump right to that. There's so many places we can start, but let's jump right to that incredible moment when you were going through this wild breakup. And then we'll get to the origins of how Johann and I met. But for some reason, this story is just top of mind, and I want to crack into it, and then we'll backtrack to how we met. We met when we were 18 or 19 in Europe. We were both modeling in Paris and Milan, and we met on a subway train. But you made a really big switch about, must have been 12 years ago now, where one of our teachers that Johann introduced me to, Kathy Martino, because I had a bad back and I was going through a divorce and a separation. Johann sent me to Malibu to meet Kathy. And my whole life changed because of this meeting with Kathy. And Kathy used to work on Bob Dylan and on James Cameron, and she just was a very gifted human being. She would do a type of therapy, but she would also do physical work on you. And I went to see her, and then she did so much work with me that she ended up living at my house for a few years. And Johann came to my house, and Johann was going through this really intense thing with his partner at the time. And Kathy had shared something with me about Johann, and I recorded it. And I remember, and it was such a profound insight into Johann, but it also felt a bit creepy because Johann wasn't there when she was talking about these things that Johann had to work on. But I recorded it, and I was like, Johann, I want you to hear this recording. It could go either way. This could be like the end of our friendship, or this could be the best thing ever. And so I played him this voice recording of Kathy Martino, my teacher, sharing about some of the things. Do you want to explain just a little bit? Because your perspective and your side of the story is so powerful.
Yes, I remember this very, very clearly. I was at 3 years with my ex-wife, and we had, really, I had come to the realization that sadly this relationship wasn't going. We were just spiraling down and spiraling in place, and we were stuck in a pattern. And I realized in that moment, like, this couldn't go on like this, because it was just destroying us versus giving us an opportunity to heal and to grow. And we were enabling each other essentially to stay in this pattern. And I remember talking to Paul and, saying, hey, I got to this conclusion. And he was like, before you say anything or do anything, just please come over, talk to me and Kathy. Let's make sure that this is the right decision to make right now. And I remember going over there, and I got there, and I'm completely like distraught, destroyed. Like I still love my ex-wife. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul. And so this was really, really hard and difficult. And like Paul alluded to, I was very much at that time, and I was 33 at the time. I was so in the knowing, which is a very masculine trait. It's a very young man's or a young woman's trait, like, or a teenager trait, even. Like, I know everything, right? You're just in the knowing. You're right, and everybody else is wrong, and they don't get it. And I kind of lived my life from that place with a lot of conviction, if you will. I was like very certain that I had it figured out because of all the spiritual practices that I'd done. I got into meditation and breath work at the age of 14, and I gone deep into different lineages and learned so much about spirituality, but it was all here and none of in the mind, right? It wasn't connected to the heart. It wasn't connected to the body. And again, that's where Paul was living from. And so he, for me, was my medicine to really like travel from my mind to my heart and connect the two. And so I remember going over to Paul's house, and I got there, and he was like, listen, there's something that I think you should listen to. And this is a recording that I had with Kathy about you not being here. And it's very vulnerable for me to share this with you, and it could break our relationship, I think, or our friendship, but I really feel like you should hear it, because when you're spoken about, when you're not present, maybe things are said that otherwise would be almost too difficult or too uncomfortable to be said. And so he handed me his phone, and I went and sat in my car, and I listened to this hour-long conversation, and it was very difficult to hear, because in that, Kathy and Paul really reflected my blind spots and reflected, the way that I was maybe pointing fingers and forgetting that I got these three fingers pointing back right at me, and where I wasn't seeing my pattern, where I wasn't taking responsibility. And a part of my identity was crushed and wanted to run and wanted to just be like, this is not real or true, And then another part of me was like, oh, wow, I'm really in a pattern here. And I see this, and it is me, and I have created this. And now I have an option. I get to either go in the house and take this further, or I get to just repeat this pattern and, stay in the knowing versus really break this pattern of mine, and also simultaneously essentially die a death of identity and story and narrative of who I've been, and get to become something else. And so I chose the latter, and I went into the house, and we continued the conversation. And while I didn't agree with everything at the time that they expressed, there was so much there that resonated. And I remember sitting on the floor in Paul's kitchen or in the bedroom, and just weeping, while Kathy and Paul just energetically held me. And it was one of those moments. I've been in a car crash once in my life at the age of 16, where I thought I might die. I flipped the car upside down, like fire, everything. Obviously didn't die, but it was a close call. And it was the same moment, like my life literally flashed in front of my eyes. I saw my whole life, everything. And I also saw how I had been perpetrating certain patterns and certain behaviors because of my own ego and unwillingness to look at my own stuff, and who I'd attracted into my life, and what I'd based my life upon, essentially. And through that process, that night, it cracked me so wide open to be able to take responsibility and really to begin my journey of going from being in the knowing, needing to be right, to being in the learning or being in discovery, and letting go of the need to be right, which then takes away so much pressure from you when you as a person can just say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to try a different avenue, a different way. I'm open to it. And so it was such a profound moment. It makes me emotional to think about it, because it was, I believe, in a way, truly a rebirth into who I now get to be, day in, day out, and get to grow into more and more, because as I've discovered, there is no destination. The journey is the destination. And when we embrace that, we can forever be in the learning and forever be in the growing. We can forever stay humble and be receiving of the magic and majesty of life. And it just gets better and better forever and ever. And it's just the one of the most profound gifts that was ever bestowed upon me. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Kathy, for that moment. Thank you.
Dude, I like, and being from where you came from too, Estonia and Finland, especially the Estonia and the eastern part of Europe and former Soviet Union, to being, as a young man, what you had to come through. And I want to actually jump back there for a minute. What the shell you had to create to not feel, and to not be a part, like, and then not just not feel, but to be in the knowing it, like, to make the jump from your upbringing and what it was to be a masculine man to then be in the learning and the discovery and actually soften that thing was quite a journey. And how did that journey start for you? Like, because let's go back to where you were born in Estonia, right?
I was born in Estonia in 1977, which was Soviet Union at the time. And this, again, a lot of this I've come to realize later as I've done a lot of the deeper work on myself and psychology and psychiatry and the different modalities that I now teach and share with the world. And acting, actually, for me and Paul, I would say both, was a really profound gateway, as well as into really understanding where these triggers come from. And it was very therapeutic, and just understanding our old trauma. And we do these exercises sometimes, sense memory exercises, when you go back in time and your body literally remembers. The body keeps the score, right? So the body remembers. Even if your mind or your brain has blocked it out because it was so traumatic and difficult, a lot of most of it lives in your body. And that's why, again, when we talk about pyramid breath method and these modalities that somatically help us release that trauma, how important that is and why it's so important. But so for me, even on an epigenetic level, like genetically for generations, my people, my parents, my family, we were suppressed, oppressed by the Russians, by the communists. And so, you could be sent to Siberia, you could go on death row, you could get tortured, which a lot of my family unfortunately did. And so, that's just like coded in there. There's no freedom. First of all, you can't express yourself. Imagine, like, in today's world, it would be in North Korea. The people there cannot express anything but, oh, our leader is great and wonderful, even though they likely very much know that that's not true. But if you say what's true, you will be sent to a labor camp for life. And not just you, but your whole family. That's a real situation over there. And so similarly, that was sort of coded in me. And then at the age of 10, my mom and I left to Finland to sort of escape Soviet Union, if you will, because we did, this was 1987, and we didn't know that it was ever going to end. And I remember being interviewed by KGB officers, at the age of 9 and 10. They were seeing, like, is there another layer to this or whatever, taken out by this nice uncle, in a uniform and being questioned. And again, later on, remembering all these things. And then when we got to Finland, to the Finns, they lost a huge portion of their country to the Russians, the Soviet Union, during World War II. And so to them, I was the enemy. Right, to them, I was a Soviet, I was a Russian, I was the enemy. And so as we kept moving from small town to small town, there was a lot of bullying. It makes me emotional now because I'm just so much more open to it, to feel all that as a little boy. And my little boy, my mom was working a lot, just trying to make the ends meet. And I had to create a barrier and a way to exist in the world that allowed me to feel safe, well, or at least project this image of confidence and safety, even though on the inside I felt very much alone and scared, persecuted. And so it was a really difficult time for me. Oh, I'm sorry. Wow, feeling a lot of feelings right now around this. Just having a lot of compassion for that little boy at the time. And so anyway, I created this shield of strength and masculinity or strength of this little boy that I felt like, if you spit in my face or you hit me in the face, which has happened, that I would just be like, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
Yeah.
And so my big thing was like, I don't care. You can't hurt me. You can't touch me. Like, I'm invulnerable. Like, you can't do anything to me that would hurt me. That's what I projected.
Right.
And, and so it semi-worked for me, or at least that's how I survived. It was my survival technique. And then over time, I just built upon that, because you have your 10-year-old brain. And then as teenage brain, and our brains don't fully develop, I think, until we're like 25 or something, right? And so I was like, okay, this thing is working. This thing is working. And so I kept building on it and building on it. And then when at the age of 14, I was really becoming like suicidal. I was becoming really, really depressed because I'd essentially separated myself from everyone. No one was close enough for me to share my truest feelings, my truest heart, and what was going on. And so even my closest friends, I wouldn't feel safe enough to share this part of me with, because I thought I would be ostracized or made fun of, or I would be destroyed essentially. And then I found this meditation practice that became helpful for me, which I just would go inside at night and sit and do this meditation into my inner world, and through that discovered my inner world, which just was really wild and even scary, but it gave me some sort of a relief. And so when I was 15, I had this really wild experience when I was doing this exercise. My awareness, my spirit, my soul left my body. So I had an out-of-body experience and like flew through the wall into a tree out in the park, and then up and down the park and back into my body. And it maybe took like 15 or 30 seconds. But it completely changed my life, changed my awareness. And I was like, wow, there's so much. The story I made up about that is like, there's so much that I don't know about mysticism, and so much I don't know about this. So it really got me deep into discovery mode of that. And then I got actually into Eastern philosophies, began to learn about Taoism and Buddhism.
How old were you at this point?
15.
Okay, 15.
15. And for me, it was really but what it was really, and what I didn't know at the time, I was still very much in the mind. I was in the head. I was trying to process everything. My heart was still not open to these experiences, or I wasn't willing to open my heart. And so a lot of the learnings over the years, as I deepened and deepened into these practices, they were very much like rigid practices. They were very much controlled practices. And when Paul and I met, I was in that place. I was very much in the knowing, and even through acting journey and all of it, it was like I was still living up in the headspace. And so tying it back into that moment at 33, crying, fully, just my life flashing in front of my eyes in your home. That's where really the journey began, from my mind, my head, to my heart. And it wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. It continues today. And I'm very, very grateful for it. And I'm also very grateful for the journey, because through that pain and through that hardship, I feel like I have gained so much compassion and understanding into people suffering, right? And so when the practices that I now share and teach with the world, and myself embody and practice, really draw so much from that trauma, so much from that difficulty that I endured or experienced, or that was bestowed upon me as a gift, as a blessing, even though at the time it seemed so challenging and so difficult, to the point where I literally, have had moments with a knife in my hand, ready to slice my veins, and not the way that's like a cry for help, but the way to really end your life. And I'm grateful that I didn't. I'm grateful that I chose to stick around. But I understand. I get it. I've been there. So for the folks, that are listening or that are going through a hard time, there are modalities and there are ways for us to transform all of these traumas and all of these energies and all of these disempowering narratives into empowering ones, and really use our challenges and difficulties to create more love, safety, connection, meaning, purpose. It's all the things that we truly desire to experience in this life.
Take me to the moment you had the knife on your wrist. What got you to that low of a moment, and then what was the thing that actually stopped you?
I've never shared this before, actually, I think publicly, but I got caught stealing. I ran with a really rough crowd in Finland. I was living in Finland, and I was really attracted to folks that were my buddies. Most of them were in a special school, and in Finland, a special school is for the kids that are like, they're just troublemakers, right? They're just not they just cause so much trouble that they put them all in the special school where they have much harsher sort of rules. And so I ran with that crowd, and through that, we were just a bunch of shits, if you will, and getting into a lot of trouble. And so this was the very first time and very last time in my life that I can't lie, I can't steal, none of that. It's never been in alignment with me. But it's so funny the way that divine works and orchestrates things, because for me, I was like, well, my friends are getting stuff for free. And mind you, I was at a level of sort of life where, there was food insecurity, I didn't have money, there was nothing. So it wasn't, I had a roof over my head, and in Finland, like, you get food in school and stuff, and they have a very great social system. But I went to the store and I was like, maybe I can do this thing too. And so I just went and like put a bunch of things up my sleeve and in my jacket pocket. And it was like, none of the stuff I even needed. It was like, well, can I pull this off too? And I remember walking through the cash register, and, and I was on my way out the door, and this, guy in his 30s pulls me over and is like, hey, son, I think you forgot something, or, I forget what he said to me exactly, but basically he pulled me to the back room and he was like, show me your pockets, and I just broke down, like, crying, and because I knew I was wrong and I'd done this. And then, I felt so shameful and so bad. And then, the store then called my mom and told my mom about it. And my mom, bless her, like, she made me feel even worse, and really, really shameful, and said some things to me that were really, really challenging and difficult to hear. And I just felt like my world collapsed around me, and I felt so much shame that I wanted to end my life. I was like, you know what? I can't do this. At the time too, my mom and I were not close at all. We've since healed our relationship a lot. And I think she, took on that shame of having a child who's a thief, and she went to this whole story and narrative around it that was very, very difficult to hear. And I'm sure there was other layers of frustration and her pain and her life and her anger and everything sort of came out in that moment. And that was the moment where I was like, well, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, I don't have any support, I'm now a thief as well, and like, what's the point of living? And having that knife in my hand, I really was just kind of toying with it, like, even like getting closer and closer to doing it. And then something in me it was almost like an FU to my mom. Like, I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna let you be the reason why I end my life. I wasn't even thinking about her and her pain, like what she would, go through finding me like bleeding in the room. I was just consumed with my own stuff, Looking back now, I have so much more compassion for myself and for her and the whole situation. But again, that was a big initiation for me. First of all, to really understand I'm not built to lie, to be inauthentic, to steal, to any of that stuff. Like I just can't. I
Yeah.
can't live with myself, you know. And that was now looking back, that was one of the most powerful lessons for me, to learn that in that moment. And yeah, that was sort of the story around that point.
Man. And you were you raised partly by your grandma? Because I there's this picture where you were close to your grandma, right? Because there's this picture at your house of you as a young teenager with your grandma. What was that? Why was that relationship so important?
So my grandma, who lost her mom in Siberia in the Gulag, and lost her father in the forest.
How does that? I don't understand what that means. So they're in the
So yeah, of course. So when I'll go back a little bit. So when the Russians came in and the Soviets took over Estonia, my grandma was 14, I think, at the time, and had two younger siblings. And because we came from a family who had land and like a farm, and and we were considered wealthy, if you will, even though it's like you're just a farmer, like that was wealthy. You have people working for you, and so by the Soviets and communists, you were considered the enemy. And so anybody who was educated or anybody that had land and property basically they were killed or ostracized, sent to Siberia. And so the gulags were in Siberia. You imagine, like, 40 below, 80 below with wind chill, like nothing around at all, work camps. And so they sent my grandma's mom there, and she died there. After I think she was there for 15 years, and she died like literally like a week before she was supposed to come home. So she survived a lot of it, but she had an aneurysm and never made it back. And then her dad died hiding from the Russian forces with these Estonian like rebels, if you will, in the forest. And we don't know if he got shot, if he just died of hunger, or what happened. But she basically became a mother to her younger siblings at that age. And in Soviet Union, she could never get a job beyond a factory worker. Like, she was blacklisted, right? But what she maintained through all that was she was, for me, the most loving presence as a child. Like, she was my safe space. She was the heart space that everybody else, how they were dealing with. And again, think like today's North Korea, survival. Everyone's just in survival, right? No one's thriving, unless some people were, but it was just not the good kind of thriving. Like, it's black market and it's politics and all that stuff. But my grandma was that divine feminine presence for me that represented love. And again, going back to my mom's story, even she was brought up with the belief, and because her family, her dad and their parents, there was this belief around, I think, early 1900s, late 1800s in England, that you shouldn't hug your child. You shouldn't tell your child that you love them, because it would make them like better people and not needy and like more independent, right? And so she grew up in that. So the words "I love you" had never left her lips towards me. Like, I'd never heard that. So my grandma was the love bomb, right? In the best possible way. Like, she was the safe space of love for me and always represented that.
And where was your dad throughout like your childhood? I know like obviously if you want to talk about this, I know there's been because it's so important to understanding, our relationship to our, my dad, I grew up in Canada and I didn't know anything about like that part. Like, when I hear Siberia, it's like, I didn't realize that people were sent there to like work camps. I didn't know that happened to your grandma's mom, to your grandma's mom and dad. And my growing up in Canada, it's like the teddy bear version of all of that. Like, there's like Canada growing, of course, my ancestors came over on a ship from Holland, and it was challenging because they were, the Germans were in on Holland, and my grandpa has these crazy stories of hiding under the floorboards and hiding Jews under their floorboards, those stories are removed from me in a way because I have this little cassette tape of my grandma like talking these stories. That's so special. She's like, we stole the Germans' bike just to do it. Like they would steal their bikes. And to this day, at like the soccer games, you hear the Dutch like chanting, "Give us back our bikes." Such a funny part of being Dutch is the that side. But when I hear you talk about that, and you know, my dad was such an important part to me growing up, but he worked all the time. My dad was in oil and gas, and he was gone 2 weeks to 3 weeks at a time, and then he'd be home for a week or two and then be gone again. And you know, we're very much impacted by our fathers too. So how did your dad impact you, and how's your relationship with your dad?
Yeah, so my dad wasn't around when I was a kid. My mom and dad separated at a very young age. My dad's a very, very interesting character, and a poet and a singer, now also a healer. And he, at the time, was one of those folks in Estonia who would actually really rebel against the regime. So my dad spent several years in prison and mental asylums. In Soviet Union, they had this rule that you could put a person in prison for 6 months under investigation, essentially, right? They would put you in. So they put him in for 6 months, let him out for 2 hours, put him in for 6 months, let him out, and then want to put him back in. And the reason he ended up in a mental asylum is because he pretended to be crazy. So because the treatment and the food was better in a mental asylum. So my dad's a pretty crafty guy. And so he wasn't around at all, or much at all, in my youth. I saw him very rarely, and so I was really kind of lacking the father presence. And especially when we moved to Finland at the age of 10, because in Estonia still I had a lot of family, so I would get it from like my grandpas and other places. But in Finland, really from 10 to 16, my dad wasn't present at all, and it was just me and my mom and no family. And again, this is Iron Curtain, like, you can't reach your family. There was no internet. There was no way to stay in touch. Like you were in an isolation, essentially, right? However, my dad really had a big impact on me when I began my spiritual journey at the age of like 14, 15. He gave me ideas for books to read that had a really powerful impact on my life. And then, so my dad and uncle actually defected Soviet Union. My dad got out of prison because my uncle is one of the most famous actors in Estonia and also in Soviet Union at the time. And he wrote a letter to Gorbachev, and Gorbachev was like the change, the coming change, and obviously it led to the collapse of Soviet Union, thankfully. But he wrote a letter to Gorbachev to let my dad out of prison because he was literally in there for no reason, except KGB didn't like him. And then they basically, got to Finland, which their passports were stamped like you can never leave the country, but somehow they got out to do a performance. But Finland would still give you back to the Soviets. That was their deal with the Soviets. So KGB knew that if they tried to escape to Finland, they would be given back. However, they secretly got on a ship to Sweden, and that's a whole other story. But they were able to escape Finland to Sweden, and because my dad's treatment, he was on the lists of Amnesty International and other international organizations. They were able to actually go to the U.S. Embassy and ask for asylum and they got granted asylum in the United States. So I'm so grateful for that and for this country for having that option, because it got them to U.S. and got them safe. And they were literally they found out later that they were literally on a kill list. Like they were going to find a way, KGB was going to find a way to off them. Like that's how serious it was. So when I was 16, my mom, and this is one of the greatest things I'm grateful for my mom is like, we didn't have a lot of money, but she put enough money together to get me a ticket to the States to come visit my dad. And so I came to visit when I was 16. And for the first time in my life, I remember landing at LAX in LA. Before the wheels touched down, I knew in my body, and I was like, wow, I'm home. And for the first time in this life, I was like, wow, I feel at home, And then one of the first places that my dad and uncle took me was Topanga, where I now live. This beautiful place that's between Malibu and Santa Monica in the mountains here in Los Angeles. And I had another huge spiritual awakening here, and just really remembered so much more on a visceral level about myself when I was able to release a lot of the pain and a lot of the suffering that I was carrying, release a lot of the depression. But when I went back to Finland, I was here for a month and a half and went to see Grand Canyon, and they took me around and really were incredible. I again was faced with the same sort of circumstance of I'm in the wrong place, in the wrong society, and getting back into the depression train. And so every night I just prayed. I prayed so hard and so diligently, and my vision and my prayer was to get back to the States. And while I was in the States, some friends of my father were like, your son's really handsome, you should consider being a model. And which I laughed at, because no one had ever said anything like that to me in Finland, or I was just like another blonde guy. And then when I got back to Finland and I told that to my mom was like, well, I was laughing about it. And she's like, well, what if you took it seriously? I was like, come on. And, by the way, just gotten out of a really awkward growing stage, teenager, long limbs, just self-image is in the toilet. And then she was like, well, maybe if you did it, you would make enough money to go back to America next year. And I was literally, a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, say that again? And I was like, all right, let me find a modeling agency. I'm going to walk in there and see what happens. And it was just a sign from the divine,
Wow.
And I walk in there and they're like, yep, you're hired. And I literally was able to make enough money and then some to get back to the States when I was 17. And then I was just coming to visit. And then a couple of weeks or a week even before I was supposed to go back, my dad was like, you want to stay? And there was literally 0% hesitation. I was just like, yes. Is that are you cool with that? He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I stayed, and very quickly then also we moved to New York. My career really took off very immediately, which was really a beautiful thing. I started working with the top photographers and doing all the big campaigns and traveling around the world. And that's right around the time I met Paul as well. In that subway in Milan, and we have a picture to prove it. And
I gotta find that picture to put right here in the podcast. I gotta find that.
Yeah,
it's such a fun moment to go back and see that. It seems like your dad had the biggest impact on your life, because he was your portal to coming to the States, without his and the whole journey, right? Without, oh, man, it's such a, the story of the Chinese farmer. The Alan story. Well, the Chinese farmer, you've probably heard it. He has a team of horses, and the horses break out and they run away. And I think he only had 2 horses or something, and they broke out and ran away. And the whole village comes to him and says, "Oh, you poor farmer, this is devastating." And he responds to them. He says, "Maybe." And the next week, those horses bring back a whole team of horses, 50 horses. So the farmer went from being poor to having 50 horses, and the whole village comes and says to the farmer, "Wow, lucky you, you're so lucky." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." The next day or week, his son is training and trying to break some of the wild stallions, and he falls off and breaks his leg. And the village comes and is like, "Poor you, you're so unlucky." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." The next week, the army comes and recruits all the young men, and the young man's boy can't go to war because he has the broken leg. And the village comes and says to him, "Wow, you're so lucky." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." And so it's the worst things that ever happened to us. What I take from that story is in hearing your story, there's these sequence of events that in the moment are the worst possible thing. But then you look back with a little bit of perspective and you're like, oh, wow. Yeah. I wouldn't even be here had I not fallen off that horse and broke your leg, or had your dad gone into that insane asylum, and then your uncle had your uncle not gone to that audition or whatever that made him an actor, and to be able to write a letter to Gorbachev, like there's just these profoundly blessed tragedies that are really are wrapped up as a gift. And if only we're able to sometimes just sit with it and like and be with it and understand that the worst thing maybe is the best thing. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that the older that we get and the, wiser we get in experience, we can really look back and apply that wisdom into our life now. And one of the teachings that I share with my clients and with the world is we get to decide in the moment whether something is good or bad. We have a 5-to-1 negativity bias, so we tend to assign negative or sort of tragic meaning to things. But just a story that you just shared, we also either get to say maybe, or we already get to say, wow, I know this to be a blessing in disguise. I know this to be a contraction that's leading to an expansion.
Yeah.
And then it allows our nervous system, like another thing that Alan Watts says, is no amount of anxiety is going to make any difference about what's going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. Right. So why don't we learn how to convert that anxiety into excitement, into gratitude, into joy, and the disempowering feeling into empowering feeling. And that's up to us to do. That's not an outside in event. That's an inside out event. And that's literally like the pillar of pyramid breath method and what we teach. Same, I know you and Kate, that's what it's all about, y'all, is like, we get to decide in the moment whether this is good or bad, if it's happening to us or for us. That's all there is. No one else has any influence, on it in that way, or the outside circumstance. If we believe it to be here for us, that's what it is. And doesn't change maybe the challenge or the difficulty of the situation, but it certainly changes the way that we alchemize those energies into whatever we choose to make with it.
It's just the power of perspective, right? And that is an inside out job, and breath work is one of those things. And the power of ritual, and you have such a deep ritual of coming to your meditation space and your breathwork space as since you were 14 or 15. 14. And how, so just to be able to alchemize, or to be able to choose that life is happening for you, isn't just like a mental trick, right? There actually is work that you get to do on yourself, and there is ritual that you bring into your life that gives you tools to then have a different perspective. You don't just like all of a sudden have like be able to shift that 5-to-1 negativity bias to a 5-to-1 positivity bias without some tools and some work. And your dedication to ritual and now sharing the pyramid breath with others is definitely, at least from what I can hear what you're sharing, it's one of some of the tools that allows you to choose that life is happening for us instead of to us, and you're not a victim. Am I right with that?
1,000%. Yeah. And what I've found is so important is that these tools, because a lot of the things that we learn when we read books, for example, which are amazing and incredible, and some people are, very intelligent or very knowledgeable, and it's not yet applied wisdom because it hasn't been felt by the body. So similarly, rituals that you may do, and even like traditional meditation in a lot of ways can really, in my experience, can be very heady and intellectual. And then our mind, which, our brain, which we, in psychology, and they talk about the mind being like 5% and the body being 95%, right? So if 5% believes or wants to believe something, and the 95% goes like, no way, that's not real, that's not true. It's just not the 95 is gonna win out. And so how do we align our psychology with our physiology? How do we, align our brain-body connection in such a way that the experience, the ritual, becomes embodied, that it becomes a real experience that we can viscerally feel to be true? Because that's how we know, that's how every part of us is going to go, that really just happened. right? When we have an experience with the divine, and that it's not like, yeah, I think I felt something. I think something happened, but it's like, no, I felt the presence of the divine in every cell of my being. Like, wow, that's when you know. And one of my teachers, and this is really potent too, is like, he has this saying, he goes, it's easy to get enlightened, or it's easy to get to that state, or, easy may not be the right word, but you can achieve it. But then to stay in that place is difficult, because you leave your house, and a car almost hits you, or you almost fall over your bike, or you get that email, or, you get scammed or spammed, and you're like, gosh darn it, like, and boom, you're again in the 5-to-1 negativity bias, and everything's bad and wrong, and world is happening to you. So what's so important about these practices is to make them into a habit. So it's part of your habit, part of your daily life. And again, it doesn't mean that you need to go and like live in a cave or live in a monastery, or, it needs to take hours and hours of your day. How can we make these practices fun, enjoyable, addictive in the best possible way, so that you're going to want to do them again and again and again, so you can get that state change, even in just a few minutes time, so that you remember, that you decide, you are the architect, you are the creator of the narrative of your experience. And that's where the real true power lies, I believe, in being an embodiment of that divine love, right? Because I don't believe divine love lives outside of ourselves. Well, one could say that, what is God not, right? God is everywhere all the time. Everything is God. That's what I believe, at least. And it's so, but how can we as human beings, as in these bodies, be emanations, embodiments of that divine love? How can we, with our touch, with our presence, with our words, with our creations, invite more people and more beings into this expression? And truly, I believe that's the healing that the world is so desiring to experience, to feel safe around each other, and to be in that remembered state of divinity together.
Right. A remembered state of divinity. I know it's like we forget that how connected we all are, and we start believing the lie that it's us versus them, or like we're separate. And one thing I love about the pyramid breath is that it moves you into you alter your state, you engage your physiology, and you actually takes you out of your mind. And a lot of for a lot of people to sit down and meditate or be quiet, the mind's just like racing. And so I actually would love for you to drop us into a bit of pyramid breath. And then after, you can share with me how you got started doing pyramid breath, because we're going to go in reverse here. I want to drop in with, and we have a live audience here with us as we're recording this. And so those of you with us here are welcome to join us in this. And then later, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, or you're listening to this on my podcast, and if you're not driving, join us in this breath work. It's going to be just a snippet of what Johann does. Sometimes the practice can go from 5 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on how you want to do it. But let's take a moment. Does that seem like a good time for you to do this, Yo? To drop into this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great little segue for us to really awaken our bodies and get embodied and together feel this feeling. And again, I want to do a little safety talk just before those of you that maybe are doing this.
Before we do that, I've been drinking like a lot of water this morning. So let's just take like a 2-second pause, and I'll be right back.
Great, I'll do the same. Let's take a look.
Everybody, I'm going to pause the recording just for a moment, and then we'll be right back. Hey, everybody. So this episode is also brought to you by Soma Vedic. Now, Soma Vedic is this incredible little device that you plug into your house, and it helps balance and helps actually reduce the impact of EMFs. I do have a podcast, and I'll link to that at the end of this, with the creator and the founder of Soma Vedic. I found this through Gabrielle Reese. Also, my son's mom, Angie, uses Soma Vedic. We have 3 of them in the house. What they're really, really incredible at is helping with the wild, messy frequencies of the electromagnetic frequencies that are coming through, and just radio frequencies and Wi-Fi and cell phone and your neighbor's Wi-Fi, and all of the the signals going from your power, the signaling talent, how much power you're using, those things massively interrupt our field. And so Soma Vedic is a really special, unique technology that really helps to balance that field in your house. So please check that out. There will be a link in the show notes. Like I said, we have 3 of them, and it is a profound, radical difference in our home from that. So, all right, back to the conversation. We both just went to the bathroom, and I just stopped in the kitchen and saw Ollie, who's 19. And I'm going to have him on my podcast because he's gone through such a journey with addiction and dealing with, and he's been sober for a year from his relation from marijuana and I just shared to him, I was like, hey, I'm talking to Johann, and I remember you meeting him when he was a year old. That's how well, Johann and I met, like I said, when we were 17, or I was probably 19 when we met, and you were a little younger. But then we reconnected in an acting class almost a decade after that. And then we were fast friends. We just were like instantly just started to spend time together here in Los Angeles, and went to Burning Man, and then you were on Entourage, and not everybody knows if Johann has a massive acting career. Like when I came to LA, I was modeling, and my son was just a baby, and I had 0 acting credits. And I looked at Johann, and he was on The Mountain at the time, and I had just become friends with Oliver Hudson, and you guys were both on that show together. And you and I started to spend time, and you started to introduce me to certain things that concepts I had never thought of, perspectives I had never, and you became such a catalyst when I moved out here for so many things. I was in such a bubble in New York, of such a limited exposure to anybody who might think differently than me. And I was very closed to understanding, or even thinking that somebody else might have a valuable perspective that I could learn from. I was just very bent on one way of life going for myself. And I thought that was the path for absolutely everybody. And you and I, when we met, I remember we met in Europe, this would have been 1994 or 5, no, maybe a little later, 5 or 6. There was a recognition of each other, right? Like you were on a deep yoga path, and I was on a born again. I was on a born again Christian journey where I'm sure I tried to tell you about Jesus on the subway that day. I brought my guitar, and I was always singing Jesus songs everywhere, as a model everywhere. And you and I, even though we were on different sides of that sort of thing, we both were on a spiritual journey and a curiosity, and we both loved. I could see this. I recognized something special in you even back then, and then bumped into you again. I think we almost crossed paths in New York, but then when we were out here in Sandy Marshall's classes where we saw each other, we were like, you. And then the rest is history. That's 18 years ago. We reconnected here. But you're definitely one of you and Russell Reimer are my 2 oldest, bestest, and different mirrors into my life, in different ways. Like you shine a different light of truth back to me than Russell does, but he does as well in such a profound way, man. Like I'm so present to the fact that the people you surround yourself with, and the conversations that you have with them is just really determines the quality of your life. Like your circle and the experiences and the quality of questions and the quality of good reflections back from your friends, that how important that is to having a life of really great quality. Like with Oliver, I'm just like so excited when he finds a friend that comes over and looks me in the eye and like he's got a couple really good friends, and I'm just so stoked for him because I just know how important that is.
Yes.
Let's do some pyramid breath, man. Do you want to share with us, the visual of the pyramid and like how this kind of came to you, if you want, how the evolution came for you to just go from regular breath work? Because you and I both worked with Wim Hof when he first came here. Wim Hof, for some of you don't know, is the Iceman, and that was my introduction to breath work, and our friend Rich, and we used my bathtub, and Wim taught a small group of what, maybe 20 of us or 30 of us at this weird place.
Yeah.
And that was my first experience into cold exposure and breath work. And over the years, there's obviously with yoga and Kundalini yoga, there's a breath of fire and there's pranayama breath work. And I've always loved breath work, but I've never done it as like a ritual and a practice. I've used it like the box breathing from Dr. Andrew Weil. Like when you're at a stoplight, there's like a way of inhaling and holding. And then there's priming from Tony Robbins, which has a type of similar breath work where you hold and there's like 30 breaths, and then that's the priming, you sort of prime your day. So let's share a little bit what's different about pyramid breath, how it came to you, and then let's have a little dip in the pyramid lake here.
The ocean. Yes. So certainly I would say that some of the biggest influences on me it would be Kriya Yoga, which was my lineage of yoga, which is one of the most ancient lineages from India, thousands and thousands of years old. And that was I was initiated deep into that practice and that lineage. The last initiation is 9 days long, 11 hours a day. You're just learning all this stuff, and it's kind of actually almost like overwhelming how many practices that you would literally be able to, do those practices just a couple of times a year, because there's so much to move through. However, there are certain specific practices in there that I find to be more potent than others. And so part of pyramid breath method certainly has had an influence from Kriya Yoga. And then also from Wim Hof's work, and another teacher of ours, Olaf Hartmann, who is an incredible teacher. We went to his workshops, and it was a more embodied sort of a version of breath work where you were laying down and really traveling, and this holotropic breath work. There's a lot of different amazing modalities out there to explore. And I would say, the origin for me was I had was in a very masculine way of living. And again, this Eastern European masculine way, what I thought was masculine and what masculine meant, a lot of rigidity, a lot of knowing, a lot of, sort of just rigid is kind of the best word to use it. And then at one point I had this realization that I was completely ignoring the aspect of the divine that was feminine. And, we can look at it like nature, for example. Nature to me is feminine, flowers, trees, animals, it's a feminine expression of the divine. And so I actually have a pyramid tattooed on my chest here, because for me, it's the Holy Trinity. And so pyramid breathwork really is designed to honor the parts of us that are masculine and feminine, as well as the aspect of the divine that are masculine and feminine, and really bringing them together. And some of you guys may be familiar with the yin and yang. If you see that circle with sort of the black and white, and I don't even know how to call it, but there's like black and white dot in there. It's like in everything there is balance, right? You have to have balance. And I believe that's also what our world needs right now. And luckily is also getting is a much more embodied feminine presence in the world. Women are, the more and more women are being educated, are out there in the world, like crushing it, doing it, empowered. And it's not on the expense of the masculine, but rather we're rising each other up, we're helping each other up. It's not to switch roles, but it's to really empower each other and realize how important we are for each other. How beautiful partnership is, and how much more you can learn in a partnership, and especially when you find that partnership or that balance within yourself. And so the pyramid breath method really came to me when I began to open myself up to that energy, to the divine mother, if you will. And as soon as that, I began to do that, my body began to move in different ways, and I started getting these downloads that it's difficult to almost like explain with words. It was such a visceral experience of I was being moved by the spirit. That's what it felt like. The spirit was beginning to move me. And And so it was very confronting at first to my wife, especially, and to other, because I'm very fortunate to have people come and sit with me almost every single day. Like today, I had two people that came over besides my wife and I that come and practice. And so, we went from this just sitting an hour in silence and sort of meditating is very like slow breath, silent breath practice to what you were about to experience, or a piece of what you were about to experience. And now this practice has become the basis of everything that we teach and share. And my wife is like the biggest proponent of it and loves it. But in the beginning, if you find yourself a little confronted, and you find there is resistance, just know that it's normal. It's totally okay. This is different. You're asked to move your body, and you're asked to make sounds, and you're asked to release energy. But just know that our body is designed to do that. Culturally, we tie it into kids. When you think about little kids and you look at them and you go like, wow, they're so expressed, right? Like if a 2 or 3 year old, they're angry, you know it. If they're happy, you know it. If they want to throw a temper tantrum, they're going to throw it.
Yeah.
And then after, a couple of minutes or a little time, they're happy again. But as adults, we were told essentially to shut it all off. Like just don't express that way. And because of it, we tend to just pack all these experiences and traumas and difficulties into our body. And then when they come out, if they come out, it's usually in a rage and a fit of anger or road rage or at your partner or at your
or illness or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it really turns into an illness. A lot of the diseases we've now scientifically proven literally come from mental health, right? Or stress. We still call it mental health, but it's really, we're not expressed in our feelings. And so this practice is designed for you to give yourself permission in this safe container to express your rage, express your anger, express your frustrations, express your sadness, express those things that you thought you couldn't express. And you don't have to explain it with words. You just give it a sound, give it a movement, so that you take the critic that lives up here in the head out of the way and allow the body somatically to release. And animals do that. When animals get stressed,
they shake and stuff, right? Like if a deer is chased by a lion and it lives or escapes, it shakes it off, right?
It literally shakes it out. And that's what we feel, right? Like sometimes if we're in a really stressful situation, our body like wants to shake, it wants to move, because we have all of this adrenaline like running through our body. But most of us, again, when that happens, like, no, can't show it, that's weird. Like, what am I doing? Why is this happening? And so that adrenaline like has no way to release. And so it gets packed into places and creates problems for us.
Yeah, no kidding. And what is can you explain somatic for us really quick?
So somatic release is meaning that we allow the body to express without necessarily giving words to it. Cool. So we take the mind, the thinking mind, the critical mind out of the equation. Because a lot of times we just don't have words for the experiences or certain memories or certain traumas that we've experienced. And so it can be very difficult to put words to the experience. The words are just symbols, right? However, when we can just give it a sound, so it may sound like gibberish is actually a really powerful way to express things, because the words don't need to mean anything. You're just creating a pathway for that energy to release and to transform. Right. And this is what we now also know scientifically, is that energy anywhere in the universe does not ever get destroyed. It just gets transformed. And so the whole point of this practice is that we're acknowledging our traumas and our frustrations and our rage and our anger and our fear. And when we acknowledge those feelings, we then get to transform it through this ritual and through this practice. And what we will be imagining, and I'll walk us through the imaginative part first, and then we'll do the physical part. But we imagine that in front of us is this beautiful sacred fire of transformation. And, as humans, we've always gathered around a fire. As long as we've known how to make a fire, we tend to gather around the fire to share stories, to do a ritual, to dance, to commune with the divine. And so I really want you to close, again, safety first. If you're driving, please don't do this. Please pull over. If you're in or around water, please don't do this. If you're pregnant, be very, very mindful that you might actually go into labor. So, unless you're very early on, don't do this practice, or you do a different version of this practice, you can reach out to me about that. Mm-hmm. If you are suffering sort of any sort of psychotic experiences in your life, I would also be mindful, because this can feel very intense. For most of us, it's totally fine. But if you are in that group, just be really, really mindful when you embark upon this journey. Second thing is, you can do this laying down. However, I really, really invite you to be seated, because we will be activating our spine and our cerebrospinal fluid. And I invite you to kind of almost make a wave-like motion with your spine, and we'll get into that in a moment. So seated is better. You might get a little bit dizzy, so make sure that if you are seated, you're seated either close to the floor. If you're at a table, maybe even put a pillow in front of your face. You also might want to have a pillow around, because we'll be doing some screaming. So I'm going to really invite you to connect with your rage today and scream, and maybe screaming into a pillow. It feels more comfortable, so you don't freak out your partner or your neighbors or your kids. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, full permission to go all out. Just express yourself, right? And so now let's close our eyes for a moment. And let's just put a gentle smile on our face as we do so. And when we do this, we're creating this brain-body connection. When we smile, we tell our body that we are safe. So just keep that gentle smile on your face, breathing in and out through the nose, just naturally right now. And now let's imagine that in front of us is this beautiful, sacred fire of transformation. Maybe it looks like a bonfire. Maybe it looks like the center of the universe swirling. Maybe it looks like something else to you. And then we're going to add in our senses as well. Can you maybe hear this fire crackling or moving? Can you smell this fire? Can you taste it? Can you feel the warmth from this fire? So now we're adding in all of our senses to this experience, inviting all of our body, all of our being to be in this ritual. And just creating a relationship with this fire already exchanging energy, imagining like energies flying or moving between us and the fire. The fire is our guide, our friend, inviting us deeper into this ritual. And now imagine, keeping those eyes closed, that above you, right above your head, is this field of liquid love, divine love, heavenly love. And imagine now that you open up the top of your head, like you have a lid there, just open it up, and this liquid love, this heavenly divine love, is beginning to pour in through the head towards your heart. Just see if you can feel it, sense it, taste it, hear it. Some of us are visual, some of us are not. You can have so many senses to utilize. And keeping those eyes closed, still connected to the fire in front of us, to the field of liquid love pouring in from above, let's take our awareness downwards. And connecting to our pelvic floor right now, our buttocks, if we're seated, if you're laying down your back, and feeling like we are laying or sitting on top of this infinite ocean of love, this placid ocean of liquid love. And as we open up the pelvic floor to receive this love, imagine there's like a geyser that is beginning to flow upwards towards the heart, meeting the energy from above. And again, this is divine love, aliveness, Shakti, Chi, life force, creative energy. This is all here for us all the time. Just open ourselves up to it. And it's infinite, so you can never, ever, ever take too much of it into your body, into your being. Beautiful. That's the imaginative part. So really keeping those three elements, that pyramid of the three elements connected. And now let's pop our eyes back open for a moment. Just stay with that as well. Have that be in your presence. And now I'll walk you through the physical part of the practice. And this is just a short little tidbit, short little version. We'll be breathing in and out first through the mouth. And it looks a little bit like this. I'm going to back up a little bit so you guys can get a little better of a view of me here. And now for those of us that are listening, imagine that you are just sort of arching your spine one way. So you bring your chin up and then arch your back and open your heart, open your chest as you inhale. And when we exhale, we drop the chin and we go the other way with the spine. So you're making like a cave almost when you exhale. In yoga, it's called cat-cow. Breathing in, and we bring the chin up. And when we exhale, we bring the chin down, and the spine moves in the other direction. And the reason we do this is, again, to activate the cerebrospinal fluid, to create space in a spinal column. Because you know how all those nerves are between each of those vertebrae, right? We want to open that space up and give our nerves some spaciousness, because what we do normally is we're just on our phones, on our computers, watching TV, and our spine is just curved one way. And sadly, that does, not bring us great health. So this is really physiologically, we're opening up our spine and opening up our nervous system. Now, the way that it sounds is we'll be breathing in through the mouth. Deep breath in. When we exhale, we open the mouth wide and make a ha sound. Ha. Ha. And you kind of keep your lips pursed when you breathe in. Ha. When you exhale with a ha sound, make sure you open up the mouth really wide. Ha. And drop that chin. Chin comes up when you inhale, and then ha. We exhale. Yes. Already when you do this, you might be feeling a little bit of energy, aliveness, spaciousness, oxygen in your body. So it's okay if you get a little bit dizzy. Don't worry about it. Our soul, this just came to me last night, actually. Our soul is so yearning to experience and to remember that it's infinite, right? We're in these bodies right now, but our soul, our spirit is infinite. And so this is a really good way to remember this feeling of infinite expansion, connected to the divine. It's so powerful. So allow yourself to go there. If you experience resistance, just say yes to it. I hope that you don't pass out. If you feel very dizzy, just slow down your breath or stop breathing altogether. Put your hands on the desk or put your hands on a pillow in front of you, and just slow it down for a moment and begin again when you feel safe. Now, we'll be doing some breath holds, which means that sometimes I invite you to squeeze all the breath out of your body at the same time. Squeeze your fists, squeeze your face, squeeze your thighs together, squeeze your body. And you're literally like making yourself into a little stress ball. And this is so we create deliberate stress on the deepest of levels of our body and our unconscious mind. So then we can take a deep breath in and together release it by sounding and shaking. And this is a somatic release where we literally give ourselves permission to cry, to shake, to laugh, to make weird sounds and shake your body however you want and just go wild and get free. Okay. Sometimes I invite you to take a deep breath in and then you raise your arms up like an upside down pyramid where your fingers are pointing towards the sky and you're arching your spine. You bring that chin up. And you just hold the breath full for a moment. And this is the part, again, where you might feel a little dizzy, but allow that to expand into this feeling of freedom. And it feels really, really fun, really, really good. And if you do find yourself getting too dizzy, then just slow down and just easy and then join in again when you feel that it's right for you. And then we finish this off by doing just a very short meditation where we only breathe in and out through the nose and we hold our breath full. And I'll guide us through that experience. You can't do this in a wrong way, except if you don't actually deeply breathe in and out. So allow yourself to take deep breaths in. If you need to swallow, your throat feels a little scratchy, swallow, wet your throat. And otherwise, just have fun with this. We're just going to have a great time. And before we begin, I invite you to create a dedication for this short practice. What is your why? Is it to create more freedom, more abundance, more health, more joy, more connection, more safety? Is it to express something and transform something that you've been holding in your body, in your mind? Maybe it's some anger towards yourself or somebody else. Maybe it's to create more forgiveness. Whatever it is, give it a reason, give it a why. Let's just take like 10 seconds right now to feel into that dedication. Why are we here today? Maybe it's dedicated to create more peace in the world, more love in our lives, to be more free, to be more open. Beautiful. Now let's keep those eyes closed. If you're seated, place your hands on your knees. Perhaps even come to the edge of your seat. Now connecting again with that sacred fire in front of us, divine fire in front of us, the fire of transformation, putting a gentle smile on our face again, signaling to the body that we are completely safe to transform. That divine liquid love flowing down from above through the crown into the heart, and that divine love flowing up through the pelvic floor, through the lower body into the heart to meet the energy from above. And right now, let's just all take a deep breath in together through the mouth and hold it full. Bring those arms up. Hold the breath full. Imagine that love pouring in from above and below, meeting at the heart and igniting the heart in divine playfulness. Keep holding the breath full. Feel your heart expanding with divine love. Opening your whole body, your being, giving you permission to expand, and exhaling with a sigh. Ha, drop those arms. Ha, nice. Let's do that one more time. Deep breath in. Let's hold it full. Bring those arms up, chin up. Really extend your spine here. Arch your back. Feel that divine love pouring in from above and below, igniting your heart in playfulness and courage, in joy and in creativity. Clearing the body, the mind, your channels, and exhaling. Ah, nice. Beautiful. Now swallowing, wetting the throat. Now follow my rhythm as we do a few rounds of breath together. Keeping those eyes closed. Let's be. Ah, ah. Really activating. Ah. Our voice. Ah. When we exhale. Ah. Ha, 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 ha. Drawing that energy up through the pelvic floor. Ha. With each inhale into the heart. Ha, ha. 3, 2, 1. And a deep breath in. Let's hold it full. Bring those arms up. Arch that back. Bring the chin up. Big smile on the face. And just feel that energy pouring in from above and below, expanding the heart again. This heart energy clearing all the channels, opening us. Feel that divine love nourishing us from inside out. And exhaling. Ha, nice, deep, long sigh. Beautiful. Wetting the throat here. Next round is a little bit faster. Let's go. Ha. Ha, ha. Beginning to activate the part of us that is the warrior. Ha. Divine courage, divine willingness to transform. Ha, 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 ha. 3, 2, 1. Deep breath in. Let's hold it full. Bring those arms up, arch the back, chin comes up, hold the breath full. Feel that divine love pouring in from above and below, igniting the heart, igniting all of the sacred channels in the body. Top off the breath. And now exhaling with a big sigh. Ha, maybe adding in a little bit of gibberish. Shake your body a little bit. Make a weird sound. Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. Welcoming all of our feelings too. If we're feeling happy or sad or glad or frustrated, angry, if we feel anxiety, welcoming all of it right now. And we'll really be breathing into those feelings now in this next round. Let's go a little bit faster. Ha, 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 ha. What if today was the day? Keep breathing. Ha, ha. That we gave ourselves permission to express our rage, express our anger, express our fear. Ha, ha, ha. Express our frustration, anything that arises. Ha, ha. And let it go and offer it to the fire for transformation. Ha. 3, 2, 1. Deep breath in. Let's hold it full. Arms come up. Now really allowing those feelings to expand, to come out from hiding. Top off the breath. And now slowly beginning to exhale through the mouth. Beginning to squeeze our fists. Bring them closer to your body. Squeeze your face. Squeeze your core. Squeeze your thighs together. Squeeze everything, everything, everything. Like you're pressing down on an atom to create an atom bomb. Like you're wringing a wet towel, just pressing down, creating deliberate stress here on our nervous system. So we can release it together. Keep pressing the air out just a little bit longer. And in just a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'll invite us to do a big shaking and a sound ring release, offering this energy to the sacred fire in front of us in 3, in 2, in 1. Deep breath in. Let's shake it out, scream it out. Come on. Go big here. Come on. Connect with your anger, your pain, your rage. Welcoming all of our feelings, all of our emotions. You are in a safe space. Just allow it to emerge. Visualize it all flying. Feel it flying into the fire in front of you. Beautiful. So good. And now, in just a moment, as we take our next breath in, we will merge with the fire and become part of the fire. In 3, in 2, in 1. Deep breath in together. Hold it full. Now step into the fire. Feel this fire accepting us, saying, yes, I got you. We become just pure elements here. Top off the breath. And now slowly exhaling and relaxing. And just hold the breath empty if you can here. Imagine that you are literally disintegrating, that you are disappearing. You're letting go of the past. You're letting go of the future projections. And you're dying a proverbial death of identity and becoming the infinite ocean of love, divine love below us, blinking out of existence. In just a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, with our next breath in, we create ourselves anew into this sacred fire, into this moment, renewed and rebirthed. In 3, in 2, in 1. Deep breath in. Hold it full, bring those arms up. An ecstatic birth into this moment, the forever now, the only thing that exists, the right now, this moment. In visualizing, in front of us is a sacred mirror, this cosmic mirror that does not lie. When we see our divine reflection as our soul, as a spirit of who we truly are, that we are divine love. See it in the mirror. Slowly exhaling, keeping those eyes closed. Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. Keep eye gazing with yourself in the mirror. Perhaps you can see that to your left are your ancestors, your family, those that came before us, and to your right, behind you, are the future generations, those that are yet to come. Directly behind us are the masters, the guides, supporting us in this ritual, this baptism, into becoming more and more of embodiments of divine love. This next round, this brief round, we'll breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. We'll slow it way down to get it really embodied. This feeling of divine aliveness, in through the nose, out through the mouth now. Ah. Ah. Choosing to activate our senses. Ah. Can we give ourselves permission to feel love? To feel loved. To experience pleasure. And aliveness and joy. Right now. Creating it from inside out. Remembering that we are the ones that create this feeling. We are the ones that we have been waiting for to give ourselves permission to feel good, to feel healthy, to feel happy. Keep breathing. Really embracing this moment. And as we do so, can we forgive ourselves for holding back in any way, for not showing up the way that we know we can or could, and stepping into this new way of being that is alive, that is impactful, that is embodied, that is present and radiant. And as you do so, witness yourself in that cosmic mirror in front of you in your mind's eye as divine aliveness, whatever shape, form you see. See yourself, perhaps as a divine angel. Rising from this fire. Rebirth, renewed. 3, 2, 1. And a deep breath in. Let's hold it full. Bring those arms up. Yes. See yourself with your arms raised, celebrating this moment, this right now, this blessing, this gift of this. It's so powerful. It's so beautiful. It's such a gift to be alive, to be in this body. There is no mistake. We have chosen this. Feeling divinely supported from above and below by that divine love, and a heart just like a flower of life, expanding and expanding. Exhaling, keeping those eyes closed. Beautiful. Beautiful. And now let's bring those palms together over the heart center. And the practice, my friends, does not end here. This is just the beginning. We now get to bring this love forth through us. We get to merge this inner feeling of excitement and remembering and knowing, this freedom, this joy, this whatever you experience, into our daily lives, into our interactions, into our words, into what we create. And now, when we forget, we know how to remember again. Not only are we super oxygenating the body and alkalizing the body, we are remembering that we get to be divine love, expressions of divine love in this world, which I believe is the greatest gift we can give to ourselves, to each other, and to everyone. And so in just a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, when we do open our eyes, slowly, 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 invite you to merge the inner and the outer world. Make them come together through you. Bring him into being through you as embodied love. And slowly, slowly now beginning to peek those eyes open. Keep that smile on your face. And then close your eyes again just for a moment. And again, feel that divine love, that loving presence of the divine. And then pop them open again and bring it forth through your eyes, through your body, through your being, into the here and now. Nice, guys. Yes, we did it. Yeah, awesome.
We did it. We did it. And I just want to invite anybody who's watching this now on YouTube or Facebook, just put in the comments below right here what that was like for you, what that experience was. And if you want to dive deeper, in this, you can go to, is it pyramidbreath.com where they can find out more about this? Particular? Great.
Yes, pyramidbreath.com.
Oh, that was wonderful for me. That was really, for me, that took me, out of my mind and into my leg muscles, and it allowed I felt my whole body go from this size to like 3 or 4 times the size that it was before we did that. And it's just such a profound um freedom to be able to have permission to scream, or to we have people here at our house right at this moment, so I was aware. I took myself on mute, or put myself on mute, and I was definitely aware that there's people out there, but even so I was able to really scream and shake and wiggle, and the compression part where we really went like this, squeezing down on the atom. Just amazing, just to get that lymphatic squeeze, and all the muscles, the oxygen to the blood flow, and then to just to have permission to be a full-sized human being, right? Not just be this compressed version. There's contractions all around us, like hearing about the earthquake in Turkey today, in Syria, and hearing thousands of people are dead. That's a contracting feeling. And so, or turning on the news and watching the politics, or getting news about somebody that you love that's either transitioning or hurting, that can create a contraction. So to have a ritual or a discipline, daily, you allow yourself to expand and to take, and to show up in a way that you have a tool to allow yourself to not stay in this compressed place of fear or resentment or unforgiveness or protection, like how you were raised, right? In your journey as a man, from being walled up. When I first met Johann, I was Mr. Feelings, and I would be excited about everything. I'd be like, Johann, so like, we're going to go here, and then we're going to go here, and then we're going to do this. And Johann would do this. He'd be like, how do you really feel about that? Like, just that ice cold, so just like that. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm excited about it. What do you mean? How do I really feel about that? I just told you. His level of sarcasm and Eastern European like directness, and my level of Canadian like puppy dog naivety was we were like a cartoon. We should like make a children's book of us as like as coming together. We couldn't have been more opposite animals, right? Like puppy dog, and just this like.
Well, really, what I really later on, I really studying so much about all this, I've come to realize what it was is. It was you're really pushing my upper limits on joy and happiness, and I was very uncomfortable with the amount of joy and happiness that you resided in and that you were embodying. So I had to poke a hole in your bubble every now and then, because it was making me feel uncomfortable because you were so joyous, and I was just like, no, that can't be. Let me just bring it down, because it was too much intimacy, too much closeness, too much joy. And thankfully, I feel like you've really helped me, and my wife as well, really helped me expand, much more into that, to saying yes and not needing to now blow more air into that balloon versus like need to deflate it, But it was definitely a thing that I enjoyed doing to make myself feel more comfortable at the time.
Such a journey, man. Such a powerful journey to experience and watch you, to go from closed to open. And I feel like what more is the spiritual path than to open when you feel like closing? And I mean, I feel like something like pyramid breath, or to have rituals and techniques and tools to help you open when you feel like closing. And in relationships, you and I both have primary significant relationships, and when the feminine comes up and we're experiencing it, I don't know about you, but I have a tendency, I don't like confrontation. So it's not natural for me to stay open. It is to shut down, to isolate, to block, to disappear, to go away from whatever that is. And it has been just a journey and a learning of how do I open and communicate when I feel like doing the opposite. And having a tool like this where you can just be like blah, 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 like that, you're almost like training yourself to just like, all right, it's going to be messy, I'm going to say it, it's, and I don't, you know, and to have a partner that can take it, because you're like, I'm just going to communicate, it's not going to be everything, a part of me is going to, this is only a part of me, I'm going to say it all, and please forgive me because it might come out a little gross and it might come out a little bit like rugged, but this is it, this is me. And I'm getting better at not shutting down during confrontation. I'm getting better at meeting her fire, because she's all fire and I am not, I am earth and water. And just, but I, you know, I'm very aware of training the body to express with something like pyramid breath like this can be very valuable with trying to communicate to your love. Would you agree?
1,000%. Yeah, we're retraining the, first of all, the narrative of that this is not okay, right? If you're a kid, if you're, you know, past like what, 5, 6, it's like, no, you can't do this anymore. Like, this is not okay. Like, quit, stop it. And so, and obviously, if we all went around in the world and had like mini freakouts and meltdowns everywhere, like that would not be okay either. That's why it's so important that we create the ritualistic space for ourselves and each other to be able to do this, to normalize this, because it's the most natural thing. And, you know, my wife and I, we do this practice every single day, and we almost never have arguments. And I think a big part of that is, but no, we do have arguments, but they really are rare. And because we express so much of whatever we might be already feeling and carrying, we don't project it onto each other. We actually offer it to the fire for transmutation, right? And today we did the part where we offered the things to the fire. We actually didn't really get to the next part of the meditation part because it was going to take up too much time, where we gather this this energy that we offer to the fire to create a whole new version of ourselves and a whole new life path for us. And it's you guys are interested in that, I have free videos on my channels that you can do that in. And, you know, it's just it just takes a little bit more time, not a lot, but a little bit more. And it's very, very empowering to know that you can take all this sort of angry, frustrated, traumatic, contracted energy and transform it within yourself, literally, into empowering, joyous, positive, creative energy that then you can put into your life and into creating your dreams and desires, and heal your relationships with yourself, with your partners, with your family, with your coworkers, and so forth and so forth.
Like true alchemy. That's what it sounds like to me. Truly alchemize that feeling and that anger and that rage into something, and use it, that get offered to the fire, then create something powerful and transform and
yeah. And like you said, Paul, we're training our pathways, right? And we're always creating new neural pathways, and how to give ourselves permission to be more fully expressed. And obviously this conscious communication and co-devotional communication, all these other aspects, like you said, a part of me feels this way, and there's ways to communicate, but it's so important that we are expressed, because when we're not, again, everything is energy, words, emotions, you know, like you said, energy, emotion, it's all energy. If we don't express it, it literally gets trapped in our system and it makes us sick, and it actually creates further disconnection, rather more intimacy and love and connection.
Absolutely. 100%. I feel like there's so many places we can go, like into this, some of the very powerful communication tools, which we'll save for part 2, because you and I got to do a part 2 of this, because there's some really incredible tools for communicating in partnership, conscious communication, that I'm going to save that for part 2 of our conversation. I want to share, also want to hear about just a brief moment about your 90-day, it's probably 130 days by now with no sugar. But before we do, you're currently about to start a teacher training on with pyramid breath. And so people can go to, how do people like find you? So there's two right now. We are on the February 6th, 2023. Your teacher training starts when for this round?
It starts February 18th so it just in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And yeah, and so that's for those of you guys that want to become really, really embodied in this and really understand the technique, because there's so many aspects that I don't get to cover in our quick sessions, internal parts of us, waking up parts of us that maybe we don't even know that we have, like these yogic mysticism techniques that are internal, and learning the way to move your body in such ways that are take a little bit of time, as well as really embody the practice, and then they're able to teach this practice. Because as you noticed, I'm practicing while I'm teaching. So what I love about it so much is I can feel into everybody, because we create this morphic field together that is so profound. And so I'm on the journey with you. I'm not eyes open watching you guys, but rather I'm in the container with you. And then we really get to guide the experience and co-create the experience of expansion and letting go and freeing each other, because that's what happens each time we free each other together. And it also could be, if you want to just learn the method, or if you want to get certified in it and become a teacher of the method, so that if you're, a caretaker, or you're a psychiatrist, or a nurse, or a community leader, or just a mom or a dad, or, want to create ritual in your life, that you're actually able to facilitate this in a masterful way. So that's what the training is for. It's $14.95 for a 7-week online training. It's all online. It's on the weekends. We wanted to make this first cohort really, really affordable. It'll never be this price again. So if you want to get into it, I invite you to do it now. You'll be saving big bucks for later. And I can guarantee you that it will be very, very fun. And we're going to get a chance to go really deep. And then also, the graduation process, we wanted to give people time. So it's like, you don't have to graduate at the end of the 7 weeks. There's 3 more opportunities afterwards. So you can take 3 more months to really get comfortable at teaching, leading with the practice, to then get certified as a teacher.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. And it's not obviously just for.
And the other thing, that's another easy thing is if you want to just do more of this practice, and then, have a few people on here, Eloy and Timmy, who are on my channel. It's at, you can also find it through my website, pyramidbreath.com, but I have a channel where there's hundreds and hundreds of videos, pre-recorded videos, and I do twice a week live practices as well. And short one, long ones, there's all sorts there, and it's a great way to make this part of your life, and have accountability and have a way to be guided, and just allow yourself to go deep.
I love that. So
that's very affordable, by the way.
Yeah, that's like a monthly, and they can sit with you twice a week and experience you teaching them on a Zoom type platform, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, it's not just for teachers either. If you just want to deepen your practice and actually have an amazing tool for you to to express yourself, and to not have some of the the past experiences be trapped in your body, but to have a way to somatically move them, it's really powerful. So either join Johann with his weekly thing, or else the teacher training should be a really cool deep dive. And now, if you're watching this later, just go to pyramidbreath.com and look for his future offerings of that. So talk to me real quick, and we're going to wrap this puppy up. If you're watching this and you guys have any questions for Johann before he goes, just pop it in the chat. And if it makes sense, we'll try to throw that in. But you just did a 90-day sugar detox. And I know you decided to continue with that. Can you share just a little bit about your experience of why you did that? And what are a few of the things that you've been experiencing?
I basically have had, I would say, my greatest addiction of my life has really been sugar. And I clearly had built up a whole system of bacteria and microbiome in my gut that was very much controlling my brain. And, I would just have these unbelievable cravings for sugar. And, I wouldn't be able to just eat like 1 or 2 pieces of a chocolate bar. I would have to eat 2 chocolate bars. Or I wouldn't be able to eat a banana. I'd eat like 5 bananas, and this was like a constant all the time and throughout my life present, unless I completely deprived myself. But then I go right back to sugar. And so I got really, really frustrated with that because, especially as we get older, it really does stick to your body, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. And I didn't like that I was enslaved to this behavior. So I decided to do 3 months of no sugar, starting with 2 months of absolutely no sweets, meaning like nothing that tasted sweet. So no stevia, no monk fruit, no sugar replacements, just completely just went savory.
No,
And then after that,
no fruit either, huh?
no fruit. No, no, no. That's straight up sugar right there.
Yeah.
And so nothing sweet. And then after 2 months of that, I decided to add sweet back in. And for me, I actually really like stevia. So I started adding stevia back in. And and that really worked for me because then at the 2 months point, I was like craving. I was still dreaming of like gummy bears and cake, I was like, I really want it. But then when I added the sweet back in, minus the sugar, and mind you, this means no fruit still for me. I'm so satisfied and I feel so good, and I'm not craving it. And even yesterday when we were together, Paul, and there was like these beautiful croissants and things and desserts, and and berries, which I love. And I just glanced at him, and no part of me was like, I need to eat this now. Like, oh my God, like it's getting low. Like I need to get him before, it goes away. Or I literally didn't even want it. And so and now I'm way past the 90 days. I'm probably closer to 120 days or something. And I'm feeling so good, so clear, so empowered, because I'm not just enslaved to these cravings. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find balance with sugar. So I'm still much more leaning towards just not having even fruits in my life. And just staying in the realm of jicama and unsweetened yogurt with stevia. And even though there's a little bit of sugar in yogurt and jicama, it's very low glycemic, and it doesn't trigger that response of I need more. And I'm just very happy with where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Have you released like weight, or do you have like a reduction in inflammation and joint pain? Like how are
Both.
You sleeping
Absolutely.
better? Sleeping better?
Yes, all of it, everything, all the benefits you can imagine are there. My weights, my love handles are shrinking, thankfully. I got wide hips, so if I have any love handles, I start looking like a pear. And so all of it is really working for me, and I sleep better. And just honestly, the not thinking about, when is my wife going to go to sleep so I can go and raid the munchie closet and, eat in secret, there was that bad, it just feels so free.
So
Yeah.
I love that. Well, before we take, there's a couple questions here. What are 3 things that people can do right now who are watching this, whenever they're watching this, that would dramatically improve the quality of their life?
3 things. I would say that one of the most important things, again, for me is creating a ritual, right? And we can talk about it in a way, creating a habit, right? Ritual just, to me, means that we're actually infusing spirituality. We're infusing divine energy into our lives. And I would really invite it to make it into a habit. And when we have, whether it's prayer or meditation or breath work, or it could even just be exercise, it was something that allows you to change your state. Maybe it's all those things. Maybe, and again, that's where the pyramid breath method comes in for me, is like all of those aspects are in there. You're actually moving your body, you're breathing, you're meditating, you're praying, you're creating your life. That would be number 1. I would say that constantly, number 2 is always be learning. Always be learning. Always find something new. Like our brain loves novelty, right? We love to learn new things, and then we get inspired. And then when we're inspired, we take action. And so again, I invite you to like read a book, but then also apply it, right? Or listen to a podcast and then apply it, versus just moving on to the next thing. And the next thing is application is really, really important. And number three, let's always find ways of being more loving. You know, how can we be more loving? How can we be more loving towards ourselves, towards each other, towards the world, in the way that we create, in the way that we communicate?
Yes.
I really feel that's the way to just creating a life that is, and again, not the concept of love, right? But how can we first feel so much love for ourselves and for this life and gratitude? You know what? I'm going to just add that in gratitude practice.
Yeah.
Have a gratitude practice, because that really helps us shift from the 5-to-1 negativity bias to a positive state. And with that comes love, right? With gratitude, we can really be more loving, more grateful, and focus on what's right with the world and right with our lives, and then create from that place and live from that place, because the world needs examples. Let's be that.
That's right.
For ourselves, for each other.
And you're right. Gratitude is just the fuel to that change. There's a really amazing interview with Andrew Huberman about the science behind gratitude. That is just, it's, you know, science is starting to really line up with some of these conversations, and some of the, you know, what the yogis have known for thousands of years, the science seems to be catching up to some of it. It's been gratitude being such an engine for transformation. Lasting.
So I see a question here from Lloyd. You have to speak of divine feminine to touch upon it as a male. Can I as a woman haven't connect the same polarity and become more empathetic towards masculinity or male relationships? So in those folks that are in our container with me a lot, I often speak to how powerful for me it has been to make the feminine divine, right? Because oftentimes in our culture, we've really like thought of the masculine sort of presence as this divine presence, and not the feminine. And then I've really, for me, have balanced it out to include both. And absolutely, Lloyd, I feel like when we get to within ourselves create the balance of honoring the masculine parts of us, right? The doer, the thinker, the more rigid parts, or however we as individuals exist, we can really hold that in reverence and be grateful for it. And especially when we marry the two together, when we create that alpha omega balance, that masculine feminine balance, and then also honoring that in men around you, or even females around you that may lean more towards masculine. To me, what the masculine really appreciates, so one of our love languages is across the board, is acknowledgement. So when we acknowledge within ourself,
that's right,
the parts that are masculine, or in a masculine person, the part is masculine, and celebrate and thank them for that, it all softens. The rigid all of a sudden becomes gooey and receptive, right? So acknowledging that within ourselves and acknowledging it in other folks is one of the best thing to do. Just appreciating, acknowledging, and how difficult, challenging it might be, and just taking it all in. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. And then there's another question here about, do you feel sensuality and meditation should be merged? Which I haven't. This is from Paula. Yeah. I have an answer.
Yeah, Paula. So for me personally, I have found that I have merged the two. And that's why I think the pyramid breath method is so unique and so fun and so amazing, because now we're making sensuality and even sexual energy sacred. Right. You know, when it's not sacred is when it's sort of stuck in the lower realms and it's not connected to the heart, when it's irresponsible, right? When it's guided just by this biological desire I need to have this thing right now, this release. But when we learn how to guide that energy towards the heart and the brain, you become responsibly sensual. And I would call it divine sensuality, right? Which means because what you think about sensuality, what it really means is all of your senses are activated. You are very much receptive, much more receptive than you maybe normally would be. So all parts of you are activated. So to me, that is sensuality. And absolutely, when we can merge breath and meditation and sensuality together in a responsible way, we become trustable men and women. And then the way that we then approach sexuality or sensuality is completely different, because we're doing it in an aware way, in a responsible way. We're not just driven by these repressed, shameful or urges that sort of may come up, but rather we've incorporated all of these energetics into our body and being, and we're no longer afraid of it. And we can live from a much more free and responsible place. So we can be responsibly free. And so that's what I believe. That's what I practice. And to me, sensual energy is life force energy, right? That's the energy that we create life with. And so it's sacred and it's beautiful and it's magnificent. And absolutely, like, let's utilize it to create more connection and love and good in the world.
I mean, you just have like sort of really shared with us in this couple hours we've been together, or almost there's the possibility of being a fully realized human being. Like, why, like, what a tragedy to get to the end of our lives and have us compartmentalize these parts. We're like, I can only be this. And then I feel like on our deathbeds, we're going to look back and be like, but I could have also done this, and I could have also done this and this. And, like, you and Leonard Cohen helped merge spirituality and sensuality with me in different ways. But that was one of the first times that I had felt in his poems and in his music that I had sort of permission to merge that sensuality didn't have to be this dirty little secret over here, and God was this thing over here that was like for a certain time, and that was for a certain time. But like, to have everything come together without division, without compartmentalizing or reducing something or shaming something so that something else can be better or something. You've really with your language and with your life and who you are, and also with your the practice of what you're teaching in pyramid breath, created a way to be expressed and to be fully expressed, and to daily come to your mat or to your meditation cushion or to and actually have a tool for you to practice with your physiology, with your body, to train it to open and express rather than shutting down and being unexpressed. It's powerful, man.
Thank you, brother, so much. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks to you guys for jumping on as well. Thank you guys for listening. I'm so honored and so grateful to share these tools and practices with you guys. I believe that we are the medicine that the world has been waiting for, and we have been waiting for. It all begins with us. It's an inside out job. So if you feel called, join me. Or find another way. Let's just move forward in more love, more joy, more connection, and more responsibility. And I really believe, guys, that we can have the cake and eat it too, and do it in a way that is a new. We are creating a new way of being that is being responsibly free and wild and open and in honor and respect. And I'm just so excited to continue in this path better and better forever and ever, my friends. Thank you so much.
That's right. Let's have our cake and eat it too. I think I just found the name for this podcast. So no matter when you're watching this, I'm gonna put this up tonight, right on the so people have time. They have a couple of weeks before your teacher training starts. But there's gonna be a link connected in the description right below here, where you can find Johann. You can also, there'll be a link to check out the teacher training, and also leave a comment in what that practice was for you, or if you have any questions. I do my best to try over time to get through some of these comments. Please subscribe. Please follow Johann. How do they find you on your social medias and all of that stuff? I know pyramidbreath.com, but they can also follow you on Instagram at Johann Urb.
Instagram at Urb Johann, Urb Johann. But if you can just go to pyramidbreath.com, that all takes you to the same place. And all the pathways, all the roads lead to pyramidbreath.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Johann. I love you, and I'm so grateful for
I love you so.
for your example of you can be a masculine man that is also fully expressed on all parts, that you live and you are the person and the expression, that a masculine man doesn't have to be egotistical, shut down, unexpressed, that you can be it all. You can be this man that I know so well. You can also be quiet and meditative, but you can be wild and fully expressed and not shamed for it. It's just like such an example. I feel like men need this, man. Like men need the permission to do this, and I feel like women also need to see that this is that there are men that are interested in being fully expressed like this. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother, so much. Love you so deeply. I send you guys so much love. Have the most beautiful day. I'll see you soon, my friends. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Bye, brother. Okay.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. So thank you for stopping by The Grass is Greener. I hope that this conversation with Johann was impactful for you. And I hope that you're able to take some of his tools and apply them to your life. That's always my goal here on The Grass is Greener. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Go give Johann a follow. Check out the teacher training. Of course, this episode is also brought to you by Freedom Alchemist, which is the company that my partner Kate and I have as our offering to the world. So if you would be curious, check that out. There's a link in the show notes. All of that. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. It shows me that over half of you aren't subscribed yet, and you can get notified when I do one of these. Please go to Apple iTunes and give a review there if you would feel so generous to do that. And a little subscription, little like over there, and a little review of the podcast. That would mean a lot to me, and it helps with helping other people to hear it. And of course, if you're seeing this, please share this and all that fun stuff. But until I see you, please be kind and gentle and tender and loving toward yourself in your thoughts on purpose. And please enjoy yourself.